Hello everyone, welcome to IP Study video lectures. Today we will discuss grade 8 science chapter The Amazing World of Solutes, Solvents and Solutions. In this chapter we will cover the topics solutes, solvents and solutions, how much solute can be dissolved in a solvent, density of materials. Have you ever noticed when you dissolve a teaspoon of sugar in a glass of water, it mixes and it disappears. And when you drink that water, the taste of the water is changed. But you cannot see the sugar in the water. So where does that water goes? And what is the sugar and water is called, and what we are getting after mixing the sugar into water. We are going to study about these things in this chapter. So when you are dissolving sugar in water, the sugar is solute, the water is solvent, and after mixing this you are getting the sugar solution which we get because of the solubility of sugar in water. So let's understand the terms solutes, solvents and solutions. So solute is a substance which is being dissolved in a other substance. Like in case of dissolving sugar in water, the sugar is solute. Also we can dissolve salt, that salt is also solute. So sugar and salts are being dissolved in water or in any other liquids, like you can mix sugar in milk. So these are solutes, and the liquid in which we are dissolving sugar and salt, that is solvent, and after mixing this we are getting a mixture which is called the solution. As we cannot see the sugar particles or salt particles after dissolving these in water, so we are getting a uniform solution. What is uniform solution? A solution where we cannot see the component of the solution separately. What is non-uniform mixture or non-uniform solution here? If you take a glass of milk and you add a teaspoon of lemon juice in it. So lemon juice is here solute and the milk is solvent. When you mix these two things, so what happens after a minute? You see that milk get curdled, which means a chemical change occurs here and the protein of the milk is now changed and it is precipitated in there. So what happens? In that case, we can see the different components in the mixture separately, so that will be a non-uniform mixture or non-uniform solution. Here, if we compare the quantity of substance while preparing these kind of mixture, the solute is in small quantity, small portion, and the solvent is in larger portion or larger quantity. What happens when we are mixing any solute in solvent and we get the uniform solution? We cannot see the solute in the solvent. Let's understand that. When we are dissolving a solute in a solvent, we know the solvent which we are taking here is a liquid substance and it has some interparticle spaces between their particles. Now, what happens when we are adding a solute? The particles of the solutes are settled in these spaces and we cannot see these particles anymore after dissolving the solute. If we continue adding the solute, at a certain point, this available space will be filled and at one point we will not be able to add or dissolve more solute in a solvent. In that case, we will say the solution is a saturated solution. How can you do that? For example, if you take a glass of water and you start adding salt in that. Initially, salt will dissolve. You repeat the process by adding a teaspoon of salt one by one. Suppose after adding 4 teaspoons of salt in a glass of water at room temperature, when you add the 5th teaspoon of salt, you see that salt settles at the bottom. Why? Because there is no more interparticle space is left there, so that these particles can hide into those available spaces or settle in those spaces. How can we increase that solubility then? We will understand this in this chapter further. So, if the sugar particles are dispersed uniformly, you will not see those particles in the solvent. And if the particles of any solute are unevenly distributed, so what will happen there? It will make heterogeneous mixture. And if it is uniformly dissolved or distributed, it will make homogeneous mixture. So when we are adding sand in water, it is not distributed evenly and sand particles settle at the bottom. So that kind of mixture is now heterogeneous mixture or heterogeneous solution. Similarly, when you are adding vinegar into milk, you get the heterogeneous solution. Means you can see the components of the solution in that container. How much sugar can be dissolved in a solvent? As we discussed that at a certain temperature, like at the room temperature, you can add 4 or 5 teaspoons of sugar in a glass of water. How can we increase that amount of solute so that we can make more sweeter or sugar solution? For that, we can increase the temperature of the solvent. Means we need to heat the solvent. What happens when we heat the solvent? The particles, suppose if we are taking water here. So when we start heating up, the particles of the sugar start moving away from each other. Means interparticle space is now increasing. If interparticle space is increasing, means we can add more solute particles there. Means you can add more sugar because these particles will settle in the available space. So by increasing the temperature of any solvent, you can increase the amount of solute that can be dissolved in there. For example, initially if we add a small amount of solute in the solvent, it will dissolve and it will give the color based on the compound or the mineral present in the solute. Now, if you add more solute, so what will happen? You are adding more color to this, so it will give you the deeper color, means darker color, because it is now dissolving there. At a certain point, you will see that more solute is not being dissolved here, it is settling at the bottom of the container. So here when you start heating it up, this solute will start dissolving in the solvent. But as soon as you will cool it down, as soon as the solution will be cool, it will become unsaturated, unstable. Means the crystals of the solute will start settling at the bottom again. So what is the factor which is regulating the ability of any solute to being dissolved in a solvent? That is the temperature here. By controlling the temperature, by regulating the temperature, means by increasing the temperature or by decreasing the temperature, we can change the amount of solute which is being dissolved in a solvent. Means it can affect the solubility of any solute in a solvent. So if at a certain temperature we can add more solute in a solution, that solution is unsaturated solution because it allows you to add more solute in that. But at a certain temperature, if you cannot add more solute in a solvent, that is a saturated solution at that particular temperature. So, temperature plays a very important role here. So, that's how what we understood here, that temperature is changing the solubility of the solute in a solvent. We can understand this with the help of this activity here. For this, pour 50 ml of cold water in a beaker and measure its temperature at the beginning of the experiment. Add a spoonful of baking soda to the water and stir it well. So, what will happen? The baking soda will dissolve completely, means the particles of the baking soda will settle in the interparticle space of the water. Keep adding half spoonful of baking soda to the solution and stir well every time when you are adding the solute here. This will make a saturated solution at the room temperature, where we are taking the water which is cold water. Okay. Now heat the solution gradually while stirring and measure the temperature of the solution gradually. Okay. Observe how the temperature is increasing. Keep adding more baking soda to the solution and you will see that when you start adding more solute, means more baking soda, while heating the solution, you can see that the more solute dissolve and it disappears, means the particles are settling in the interparticle space of the water here. At every step, after every small time interval, note down the temperature, how the amount of sugar is now increased at a certain temperature. Now, after recording these temperature and the amount of baking soda which is added to the solution or added to the water, and it is completely dissolved to make the solution of baking soda, you will notice that at a certain point when you have added a certain amount of the solute in the water and you stop heating here and you start cooling down the solution, the baking soda crystals will now settle at the bottom. So, this activity demonstrates that a greater amount of baking soda can be dissolved in warm water as compared to the cold water, and this confirms that heating can change the solubility of a solute. Next is solubility of gases. Do gases also behave like a solid solute? No. Some gases can be dissolved in water, but when you heat up the water, the solubility of the gases decreases. What was happening with the solute which were solid state, like the sugar and the salt? When we were increasing the temperature of the solvent, the solubility was increasing. But in case of gases, when you are heating the solvent, the temperature is increasing and the solubility of the solute is now decreasing. So, like sugar can dissolve in water, some gases also can be dissolved here. This is because of the solubility of gases. It is a uniform or non-uniform mixture. Can you see the gas dissolve in the water? No. So, that is also a uniform mixture. One very important thing to remember about the gas solubility is that it is always decreasing when the temperature is increasing. Like, it is not like the solid solutes. So, we all need oxygen to breathe. Also, aquatic animals need the oxygen to live. So, how it is possible for them to get the oxygen? It is possible because of the solubility of oxygen in the water, so that the dissolved oxygen is available for aquatic plants and animals. Like aquatic plants and algae produces oxygen through photosynthesis in the water, which then dissolve into the water, and then it is available for the aquatic animals for breathing. Next is density of materials. What is density? So, if you take different substances like sand, or pieces of paper, or you can take the pieces of sponge and you place it in a glass of water. What will happen? The sand will settle at the bottom. You can take some pieces of pebbles also. Pebbles will settle at the bottom. And what happens to the pieces of sponge? These remain floating on the surface of the water. Take some dry leaves. These also start floating on the surface of water. So what is the difference here among these substances? The substances which are denser, they are settling at the bottom of the water, and the substances which are lighter, they are floating on the surface of the water. So density is a property of matter that tells us how many particles are packed in a certain amount of available volume, space or volume. So how we are describing it here? For example, if you take a small brick of sponge and you have a same size of brick made up of a metal like the iron. We know whenever iron bricks are placed in the water, they settle at the bottom, but the sponge remains floating on the surface, though their sizes are same. So what it is describing, that if iron is settled at the bottom, it is having more particles packed in the same volume, and the sponge has many gaps between their particles. In the structure, if you notice the structure of a sponge, you can see many air gaps there. So in the same volume, less particles are packed. So this is less denser. It will float on the surface. So here we can say less denser materials are floating and more denser materials are sinking. Density is affected by three factors. What are these? The temperature, which inversely relate to the density due to the volume changes. Why? Because density is equals to mass divided by volume. If the temperature is increased, the interparticle space increases, the particles of the material goes apart from each other, so they become less dense. Also, the pressure, which directly relate to the density by compressing substances like gases, and the inherent type of substance. The type of substance, like we take the examples of iron and sponge again, these are two different materials. So iron brick is sinking because it is more denser, but at the same time the sponge is less denser and it is floating. To find the density of a material, you need to measure the mass and volume, so that using the formula we can find out the density of any substance. Density is mass divided by the volume. Its unit also depends on the units of mass and volume. So what we will get? The unit of mass we are using here is kilogram, and the unit of volume is meter per cube. So the standard unit of density will be kilogram per meter cube. Next is relative density. What is relative density? Relative density means we are comparing the density of a substance with the density of a standard substance here, or standard density. What is that? We are using the density of water as a reference to find out whether a substance is heavier or lighter, and we find out their relative density. There is one interesting fact. What is that? That pure water is about 1 gram per cubic centimeter at 4 degrees Celsius. The density of the water is also dependent on the temperature. If the temperature is changed, the density also will be changed here. But at 4 degrees Celsius, it has 1 gram per cubic centimeter density, which is its maximum density. This means that 1 cubic centimeter of water weighs exactly 1 gram, and density of pure water is used as the standard for referring for comparing the density of other substances. Like finding the relative density. So how can we find out the relative density? To find out the relative density, we need to know the density of the material and divide it with the density of the water, which is, we are using here 1 gram per centimeter cube. So if any substance has its relative density equal to 1, which is now same density as the water, so that will have equivalent density of the water. Any substance which has the density, relative density lesser than 1 means the density of material is less than the density of water. So what you know about that material? That this material is less denser than water and it will float on the surface of water. If any material has relative density more than the 1, which is the standard reference of pure water. So in that case, we can see that the substance will sink because the substance is heavier than the water. Determining density. To determine the density, we know we need two factors. One is mass, the other one is volume. Let's understand mass. The mass, what is mass? The amount of matter in an object is its mass. So, if we say in a brick, suppose there are thousands of particles of a substance. So, what will happen? These substances are making the mass of that. The sum of these particles is making the mass of that substance. To measure the mass, we use a device called weighing balance. Nowadays, we are using a digital weighing balance. Earlier, we were dependent on balancing machines which were using one reference as the standard weight, and on the other part, we were using the material which we are supposed to measure for its mass. So, if you are asked to measure the mass of any substance using a weighing balance, how you can find out that? We know that on the weighing balance there is a dish which also has some mass. So first of all, measure the mass of that dish. Then place the substance that you want to measure for its mass here. So the reading which we are getting here is also including the mass of this dish. So to find out the accurate weight, what we need to do? We need to balance it on the 0, or if we are starting it from there, we need to subtract this reading from the final reading so that we can get the only mass of the substance. Next is the volume. What is volume? It's also a physical quantity here. Volume is a fundamental physical quantity that describes the amount of three-dimensional space occupied by any substance. Means the particles of any substance are occupying a certain space which is making its volume in the three-dimension space. So, in case of liquids, we measure volume using measuring devices like measuring cylinder and measuring jar. You may have seen the milkman using a small jar to measure the milk. So, what is that jar? That is the measuring jar, and it comes in different capacity. So, what is different capacity? Means a smaller size is measuring small capacity, small volume, and a bigger size is measuring bigger volume. So, we can choose measuring cylinders and measuring jars based on their capacity, and these are marked as the calibration on these devices. These calibration defines the volume of any liquid held by that jar or cylinder. So, to measure the volume of liquid using different cylinder, how can you do this? Pour some water into 50 ml measuring cylinder, place the measuring cylinder on a flat surface. When we are using a measuring cylinder to find out the volume of any liquid, here we need to understand few factors which can affect the reading of the liquid in the measuring cylinder. What are these? Like the measuring cylinder should be kept at a flat surface so that we can get the even surface of the liquid and we can measure the accurate reading. Also, when you are observing and measuring the reading in the calibration, you need to keep your eye at the level of the liquid. What happens if you are not observing it from the same level? You are observing it from the lower level or slightly above from the surface. So, how will this affect? It will cause a parallax error, which means if you observe it from the top, so it will appear slightly lower, and if you observe from the below level, so it will appear slightly higher. So it is not giving you the accurate reading of the liquid in the measuring cylinder. That is why it is always suggested that whenever you are measuring any liquid in a measuring cylinder, keep your eye at the same level of the liquid in the cylinder so that you can measure the accurate reading. Determining volume of solid objects. So how do we define it? It is affected by the shape of the substance. So if it depends on whether the object has a regular or irregular shape. For regular shapes, some objects like the dice, like a cuboid, brick or a cylindrical cane, they have definite shape here, and or we can say they have regular shape. So because their shapes are so predictable, we can use special formula and ruler to find their volume. And in maths, you have studied different formulas. You have understood how to measure the volume of different shapes like the cylinder, a cube and a cuboid. To find out the shape of these objects, we need 3 dimensions here. What are these? The height, the length and the width. We need these 3 parameters here to find out the volume of these substances. So, to find out that, we need the formula volume equals to length, width and height. For irregular shapes, what if the object is not a nice shape, neat shape or fixed definite shape? So, in that case, we use Archimedes' principle. What is Archimedes' principle? Here, we are referring the amount of water displaced by any object when it is kept in the water to find out its volume. We can understand this using this activity. In this activity, place the measuring cylinder on a flat surface which is necessary to measure the readings accurately. Pour some water in the measuring cylinder to its half level. Lower your eyes to the level with the surface of the water and record the volume and mark it as volume 1. Now, tie a thread around the irregular shaped object like a pebble or stone and carefully place it in the cylinder which is holding the water. So, what will happen as soon as you will drop this pebble or stone in the measuring cylinder, it will start sinking in the water due to its heavy density, and the level of the water will rise slightly in the liquid column. Earlier it was at lower level. So what is happening? This time we will come at this level, we will bring our eye to this level and note down the volume of water now in the cylinder, which is now the volume number 2. To find out the volume of rock, we will subtract the volume 1 from the final volume. So, volume 1 is the initial volume when we were not placing any object in the water, and volume 2 is when we place any irregular shape object in the water. After subtracting this, you will find out the actual weight of the irregular shaped substance using water. Factors affecting density. We already have discussed the effect of temperature. Whenever temperature is increased in liquids, the density is changed because the interparticle spaces are now increasing. So, when the substance is cooled down, what will happen? The particles will come closer again and the density will again increase. And when the substance is heating, the particles are going away from each other, interparticle spaces are increasing, so the density become less. Next is the effect of pressure on density. We know the gaseous particles are sparsely distributed, and in liquids also some interparticle space is available. But already we have studied this, that in liquids we cannot compress the liquid by applying the pressure, though there is slight interparticle space is available. But if we compare this space with the gaseous particles, it is quite huge. So we can bring the particles closer easily. That's why we say that gaseous particles are highly compressible. So when we are applying pressure on gaseous substances, the density is now increasing because in the unit volume more particles are arranged. So what we can say, that gases are highly compressible and we can control their density by changing the pressure. Next is, for example, scuba divers' air tank is designed to store the large amount of gas so that when they are diving in the water, they can use that oxygen gas for breathing. So as these are highly compressible, these can be compressed at very high pressure to store more amount in a small cylinder. So in this chapter, we discuss the substances as solute and solvent, and when these are mixed, they are making solutions. If you can see the solute in the solvent, it is not uniformly distributed, that is a heterogeneous solution, but or we can say non-uniform solution here. If you cannot see the particles of the solute in a liquid, so after dissolving it, so that is a uniform solution or homogeneous solution. Why we are able to dissolve the solute? Because the liquid particles have interparticle spaces where the particles of the solutes are settles, or we can say they hide there so that we cannot see them. Also, we understood that there are various factors which can affect the solubility of any solute in the solvent. One factor that we discussed here is the temperature. If we increase the temperature of the solvent, we can increase the solubility. Also, one more thing we can do here, which we will understand in the other classes, that if you increase the amount of solvent, if you add more solvent in a saturated solution, what will happen? You will have more interparticle spaces available, and that in that case also you can add more solute. We studied about the density. What is density? The amount of matter in a unit volume. That makes the density, and different materials being in the same size and shape can have different density depending on the arrangement of particles in that unit volume. Also depending on the substance. For example, metals are all comparatively denser materials. And what are the factors which can affect the density? Like the temperature. Increasing the temperature of the liquid can increase the interparticle space, means they can become less denser. But in case of, and this is also affecting the solubility here, but in case of gases, the solubility of the gases decreases whenever we are increasing the temperature of the solvent, because when we are heating up the mixture, the gaseous particles are also expanding and they escape from the liquid. By increasing the pressure in gases, we can make them more denser, which is helpful here to fill the gases in small cylinders. That's it for the day. See you with the next topic. Thank you.